Good morning, everyone. We thank you for joining us for the first of the unit record trainings. As you know, this is the first of 4 opportunities to take this training. The next one will be on Thursday, the 6th of August, and that will be another general session. On the 12th of August, there will be CTC link specific session that is also suitable for everyone, but will have specific CTC information available. Also, on the 25th of August, we will have a specific webinar for the CTC legacy folks. We encourage you to sit in on more than one if you feel the need to do that. Before we get started, joining me this morning is Marla Skelly, who is our Associate Director for Compliance, and my name is Ann Boyles. Just before we get into the body of our presentation, I'd like to let you know that we will be recording this session. We do have the audience on mute currently, and we will occasionally unmute in order to take questions. We will also be monitoring the chat box. So somewhere on your screen you should have a pop-up that has the word chat. If you'll enter your questions there, when we open for questions, we will attempt to respond to each of those at that time. I've been asked to clarify what CTC means, and that is the Community and Technical Colleges. With that, I'd like to turn over the presentation to Marla.
Good morning and welcome to the Unit Record Report training. We are happy to be with you this morning in this very weird time for us all. I'm seeing Ann for the first time in about 5 months, I think, so that's sort of a treat. Just a little about me. I have been in financial aid, I'm going to say over 35 years because I don't want to really give away my age, but much of that time was spent in financial aid offices, and I did implement financial aid computer systems for a period of years. So I've been at WASAC going into my 4th year, and in my capacity as the compliance person, I'm making sure that you all are doing the kinds of things that you need to be doing. So I know it's been a challenge this year, and we are hoping to help all of you as best we can. So let's talk a little bit about what the purpose of the Unit Record Report is. Just so you have a little bit of historical background, this is the 51st year of the Unit Record Report. It's the same age as the Washington College Grant Program, which you all know as the previous State Need Grant Program. What the Unit Record Report does for us and you is it provides institutional reports and profiles so we can do institutional comparisons across the state. It measures the needs of our students, and this information actually guides legislative and other policy decisions. We have inquiries from agencies across the state that want information on how state funds, state financial aid funds, are being used at our institutions. So this is really important information that we provide to the legislature and to other agencies. It helps us inform changes in state aid programs. It helps us model the kinds of programs that we want to have, how do we want it to be used, and helps us help you. It also, this information helps us minimize ad hoc data requests to institutions because you all get in some format how you're doing with the state financial aid programs. What's our timeline? The Unit Record Manual is available electronically, and you see the link to the URL that you can go to see the manual. There's a lot of really good information in that, so I would encourage you to go through it, see what's new, check out the layout, and see how it can help you, and we'll go over a little bit of that later. The unit record report opens August 10th, which is Monday, so I'm sure you're all really excited for that. We are. October 5th, your finalized reports are due back to WASAC, and then once we get those finalized reports, we analyze the information that you've submitted. That's the point in time where you will be hearing from me or Ann about things that we need you to clarify, update, change, whatever that may be. So the earlier you get it in, the better it is for us to get what we need to get done so we can get those reports out to you in early January. The legislature is always looking for the numbers as soon as we can get them to them. So, you know, we say December. Sometimes this last year we really didn't get information to them until January. So our goal is to make sure we have these in and finalized at the end of December. So we need your help in that. So here's the manual overview, just to give you an idea of its layout. So we have the introduction, and in the introduction you've got the overview, purpose, changes, and timeline. And I will encourage you to look specifically at the changes, because that's where we put any new things that happened over the last year that will help you complete the unit record more timely and completely. Chapter 1, general instructions. Chapter 2 are the data definitions. Chapter 3 is the reporting application user's guide. And the last bit is the appendices. The appendices are probably the most important part of the unit record because it gives you all of the information you need so that you can complete the unit record and to see what kinds of information we need from you. This slide lists what is in the appendices, and you can read these as well as I. What are the need-based and non-need-based program recipients that you need to report? And we'll go over some of this in more detail. Appendix B has the record layout. C is the system edits, those that prevent file upload and import, which is really important because if you have those system edits, it won't let you import the file. D is a quick lookup by financial aid program, and E is the lookup by unit record report field name. So how do you build a CSV file submission? We want you to report only students who received financial aid based on the 2019-20 FAFSA or WASFA year. And for those of you who are new to financial aid this year, in case you are unaware, WASFA stands for the Washington Application for Student Financial Assistance. So it's the state application that we use for primarily undocumented students or students who don't want to complete the FAFSA for some reason. You report files in the CSV format with a header row. You have to have a header row or it will reject. We want you to review the field definitions in Chapter 2 of the manual and the record layout in Appendices B and C to determine your valid field content. We also have sample on our website, and it has significant layout changes for 2019 and 2020. So be aware of that and look at the sample that we have provided for you in the manual. So who should you report? You need to report need-based recipients from the 2019-20 FAFSA or WASFA. That's required. Need-based aid recipients in other programs where the FAFSA or WASFA data may or may not be available. There are some programs where it's considered need-based aid, but you may not have a FAFSA on file. And then we want you to report non-need-based federal loan recipients, those federal direct, unsubsidized loans, federal direct plus loans, and federal grad plus loans. Appendix A in the manual details all those categories. An example of one of those where the FAFSA may or may not be required are the WSOS, Washington State Opportunity Scholarship, and it's been changed a little bit this year, and we'll go into this a little later, but there are two components for the WSOS scholarships. And the SBCTC Opportunity Grants are examples of those that don't need a FAFSA. Reporting requirements for need-based recipients. It's our intention to capture all financial aid disbursements in a unit record report term by term. So we would like you to report all financial aid received based on the filling of the 2019-2020 FAFSA or WASFA. And just as a note, next year's unit record, all financial aid received will be based on the 2020-2021 FAFSA or WASFA. So we just want to remind you that you need to report on the we're looking for information on the 2019-20 FAFSA or WASFA. Programs to report. And there have been some changes, and you'll see what those are in just a minute. And you can read this group of need-based programs that we're looking at, but I want to bring particular attention to some of the teacher shortage programs. There have been some significant changes to this. So outside of your standard federal Pell, SEOG, work study, and the loans, you're going to be reporting the Washington College Grant, which was formerly the State Need Grant, College Bound, Passport to College, State Work Study on and off campus, and teacher shortage conditional grant programs. So I'm going to, just to talk a little bit about that, the teacher shortage conditional grant required the FAFSA or WASFA and was reported under conditional loans for 2017 and 18. This program was not funded in 2018-19, but in 2019, the legislature reactivated the program. The teacher shortage conditional grant is not to be confused with the student teaching grant, which was available in 2016-17 and reported under other state-funded gift assistance. The teacher shortage conditional grant will now be reported in the teacher conditional scholarships category. And the teaching grant was funded for 2019-20, and it will be reported in the teacher grant programs category. And just keep in mind that all of this information was updated in the manual, and it's updated in the unit record in the portal as well. So you'll see those fields available. The need-based recipients for other programs that you need to report will be things like the Federal Teach Grant, the Federal Health Professional Scholarship Grant, WASO Scholarship, the BA Scholarship, which was formerly the Opportunity Scholarship, and the new WASO's Career and Tech Scholarship. Other state-funded assistance, worker retraining, need-based institutional gift aid, and institutional employment if that employment was need-based. For the basic food employment and training, if your need-based recipients receive these BFET funds and they're easily reportable from your system, we'd like you to include the amounts received for the same period of time reported for your recipients. And they should be reported as workforce training funds. Programs, continuing the programs to report, federal non-need-based loan recipients, we want you to report those recipients who receive the federal direct unsub loans, parent plus loans, and federal grad plus loans. We basically are looking at, we would like you to report information for any student who received at least $1 of need-based funding, but all loans. Changes for the 2019-20 unit record report portal. This is where I would refer you to page III in the manual. All of the changes that we made are listed here, and they're easy reference. And this information we sent out when we started talking about the kinds of information we would need and the changes. We started working with letting you all know about a year ago, in the fall, that we would be making these changes. The program fields renamed in the CSV header file record layout are that the State Need Grant is now relabeled to the Washington College Grant, and the Opportunity Scholarship is relabeled to the WSOS BA Scholarship. Deletions, we deleted Federal Perkins Loan and Get Ready for Math and Science. So they're no longer in the CSV header layout. New field additions to the header are the ICER WASVA transaction number. And just to remind you why we need this, when you complete the unit record, we at WASAC we get all of the ICER and WASVA transactions that a student submits. So, but we don't know which transaction the institution paid from. So we're asking you to tell us so that when we do the comparative data between the unit record and Seesaw, we're looking at the information that you actually paid on. And the best way for us to get that information is by using the transaction number. This shouldn't be a surprise to you. We've been talking about it really, literally for about a year. A new addition is the WCG Apprenticeship Program. The Passport to College Incentive Grant. In the past, the Incentive Grant and the Incentive Scholarship have been reported separately. The Teacher Conditional Scholarship Programs, Teacher Grant Programs, and the WSOS Career and Technical Scholarship. These are all new for the 2019-20 unit record. Reporting category updates. Formerly reported in the conditional loans, the Teacher Conditional Scholarship Programs categories are now the alternative routes to teaching, educator retooling, pipeline for educators, teacher shortage conditional scholarship. Report your student teaching grant program in the teacher programs category. The others that I listed above all should be reported in the conditional scholarship programs category. And we have new teacher programs under development for the 2020-21 unit record report. There's the Teacher Conditional Scholarship Programs category, which is the Teacher Shortage Conditional Scholarship, and the Teacher Career and Technical Education Program. We also are developing the Teacher Grant Programs category, which is a Teacher Endorsement and Certification Help Program. That is the Teacher Endorsement Program or State Teach Program.
What I might mention here is there actually is perhaps one additional new program that will be in the unit record next year, and that's that National Guard scholarship. And unfortunately, I didn't get it onto this slide, so I'll make sure that I add it for the next training. But I just became aware of that, and at this point, I'm not sure which category that will be reported under or whether we'll be adding a new category for that. But just a heads up that there is one more new program that will be added next year.
Thanks, Ann. That one left me too. This year, the valid input ranges for the funds are listed on this slide. You can see the changes that were made from 2018-19 to 2019-20. So just be aware of that. If the information you input is outside those ranges, you'll get an error or an edit. The Washington College, and keep in mind, the Washington College Grant Apprenticeships will not have a separate category in 2019-20. If you have any apprenticeships, you would want to include these funds in the Washington College Grant category.
Okay. And I think we just got a reminder from Carla that aid administrators should update their bookmark. Apparently, the old bookmarks that would redirect to our correct website over the last 2 years will no longer work. And so it is important that if you have the unit record bookmarked, that you update that. So for all financial aid recipients, the following are the required fields that need to be reported. Social Security number, and we'll talk a little bit about that, more about that in a minute. Their first name, last name, gender,
are they state resident, year in school, the financial aid per term, even if it's 0, and the enrollment status per term. Report financial aid for each of the 5 terms, report enrollment status for each of the 5 terms, and report non-need-based aid received for all need-based recipients. So, like I said, if they received even $1 of need-based aid, we want you to report them, even if the rest of their aid was non-need-based. The CSV requires a header role, and there is a sample available. Financial aid should be reported for each of the 5 terms. Summer 1, which is generally a leader or header awards. Fall, winter. Semester schools would report winter as 0 since they don't have a winter term the way quarters. Spring, summer 2, which is primarily used for trailer awards. Clock hour schools may have awards for all 5 terms, so keep that in mind if you are clock hour. When should you include summer aid in your reporting? Review Chapter 2 of the manual for more detailed information. Summer aid reported are amounts received based on the 2019-20 FAFSA or WASFA. So if you paid students based on that federal or state application, then it needs to be reported in the unit record as summer aid. In general, your leader header schools report summer 1 aid, and they would report summer 2 as 0 because they have a lead. Trailer schools would report summer 2 aid and then show summer 1 as 0. And clock hour schools may report aid for both summer terms. If a student is enrolled in more than 1 term in the same summer, so you have mini sessions, you would combine those and report the total amount the student received and the enrollment status as a 1 enrollment term. Fields that we want you to report, also report for 2019-20 FAFSA and WASFA filers, the ICER WASFA transaction number, marital status, dependency status, family size, number in college, family income, the expected family contribution, cost of attendance, need duration, and need amount. No. Okay, so we're going to continue. And let me also say that if you do have questions and you don't get an opportunity to ask them, you can email either Anne or me, and we will be happy to respond to any questions that you may have if you don't get a chance to answer them. So this section, we're going to talk about special notes on selected fields. I promised that we'd talk about Social Security numbers. This is the bane of our existence, just so you know. I suspect it might be part of yours as well. But in the unit record, duplicates are not accepted. Files containing any duplicate student Social Security numbers won't upload. So it's one of those things that it really, you really need to make sure that the Social Security number in CSAW and the Social Security number in the unit record that you're reporting match. Invalid Social Security number sequences are flagged. Please don't use dummy numbers. We get a number of SSNs that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 nines, 9 zeros, and these just make it really, they're not valid. So we have to go back and figure out what it is that you wanted, and it usually will generate an email or a phone call from one of us. Social Security numbers of the Washington College Grant and college-bound scholarship recipients will be compared to the Social Security numbers reported on the WCG CBS CSAW records. So we do run comparisons, and we find a lot of issues that way. Social Security numbers of passport to college recipients will be compared to the recipient portal records. And any discrepancies are going to show on edit reports. If you do have any issues, you're probably going to work with Anne. She will become your best friend if she isn't already. the year in school is required for all recipients. So we want you to report the status as of the beginning of the term of the recipient's last financial aid disbursement for the 2019-20 year. So if they entered as a freshman or a year one and spring, quarter, or semester changed to graduated to a sophomore, then we want you to report that year in college, year in school as a sophomore, because they were a sophomore at the point that you dispersed that last term of aid. That's just a caution we'd like you to follow. Other considerations for year in school. You all probably know this, but don't automatically use the year in school reported on the FAFSA or the WASFA. Students generally tend to inflate how many credits they're going to have when they complete those applications. So we would hope that you verify their year in school. Report the highest year in school for which the student attended when the student's financial aid was dispersed. And Code 8 or other is used to report need-based aid for Running Start students or other students who have not yet graduated from high school. So that's something that every year comes up, and we have to try and figure out what that means for some of the information we receive. We want you to report family size, and this is asterisk. Keep in mind that these data elements for family size and number in college need to align across the unit record, the Seesaw, and the FAFSA and WASFA. So they need to match. So in family size, it's whatever was reported from the FAFSA or the WASFA. If they're dependent students, it needs to be 2 or higher, because if they're dependent, there's got to be at least one parent. If they are independent students, it must be 1 or higher. So if they're married and they show as married, it needs to be 2 or higher. So we'll continue with family information based on number in college. It has to be 1 or higher. The student themselves is considered in college, but it cannot exceed the family size. We sometimes will get reports that there's a family size of 2, and then they'll report 3 in college. So it's just verifying that your numbers actually make sense. Parents' enrollment in college should not be included unless you performed a professional judgment to include that parent as a person in college. We want you to report family income, the taxable and untaxed income, based on a review of the 2019-2020 FAFSA or WASFA. And usually for the 2019-20, you're looking at the 2017 income for the prior year from FAFSA or WASFA. However, if you did perform a professional judgment and made a decision, then that income should be reported. But what we want to make sure you do is that there's many instances where an institution will complete a professional judgment, change the income, but they haven't submitted that change through the federal processor or WASFA and update the Seesaw record. So if you made a change, make sure that you reported that change so that it matches what we have. We want you to report integers without dollar signs or cents. So no dollar sign, no .00. So if it's $44,010, then it would be 44010. This is the only place on the unit record where negative numbers can be used. So if there is indeed a negative family income, you can put that on this field. But it's the only place, so keep that in mind. Report the expected family contribution, or EFC. We want you to use the federal methodology calculation that was produced by the Department of Education based on the 2019-20 FAFSA or the WASFA EFC. And very often when institutional methodology is used at an institution, it tends to be different than the federal methodology. So we want it to be consistent with what the feds are reporting. The EFC may be adjusted by any professional judgment decisions that you may have made. And the expected family contribution should reflect the number of months that you report in the need duration. And we're going to talk more about that, the need duration and cost of attendance and EFC in a minute, but this is an area where we find lots of errors. So we'll talk a little more in a minute about that. Cost of attendance, as you all know, most campuses use several student budgets to reflect changes in the living expenses. So do they live off campus, on campus, with parent? What's their situation? Report the student budget amount related to the need amount. And it should be based on the number of months reported in the need duration. So cost of attendance, need duration, and EFC must be the same number of months. We'll talk a little bit in a minute about where there may be, where you don't have to do that, but generally we want everything to reflect the same cost of a number of months for cost of attendance, duration, and EFC. As you all know, the formula for determining need is cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution equals need. So we base all three items on the number of months reported in the need duration. For your need amount, report the amount used in the disbursement of aid. Report your need amount as 0 or higher. Do not report negative values here. When we go through, part of our verification of the data you've submitted is we compare what you put on the unit record to Seesaw, and if you put a negative amount here, we have to go in and manually correct that. So in your need amount, the lowest number you can have is 0, no negatives. Report your need duration based on the number of months for which the need amount and cost of attendance were reported. And these are normally integers from 1 to 12. Standard budgets for traditional institutions tends to be 9 months, but let's say that a student is set up for a 9-month cost of attendance, and then they leave after 1 term. In this situation, you're not required to recalculate everything to the 3-month duration. You can, but it's not required. But keep in mind, we want consistency. So if you do this for one student, you should treat them all the same and do it for all. The consistency for time period is what's required. So we really are looking for consistency in how you are creating cost of attendance minus FC equals need, and we want that consistency. This chart really just lists what is considered your not enrolled full-time, half-time, three-quarter time, less than half-time. Typically, clock hour term awards for full-time enrollment status, except in the final term, it can be paid for part-time. And 300 hours of attendance generally is full-time for clock hour schools. And again, clock hour schools could have 5 terms to report. Approximate term date ranges, these are very general, but just to give you an idea, summer 1, July 1 to September 11th, fall, September 12th to November 22nd, winter, November 23rd to February, and these are clock hour date ranges, spring, February 6th to April 18, and summer 2, April 19 to June 30. So yours may be reflective in that, but this is just to give a general idea. So for the Washington College Grant, College-Bound Scholarship, and Passport to College, you should report the final awards and enrollment levels of the student at the time of the disbursement. The unit record reporting tool checks against Seesaw records, and I've stressed this more than once already, but it's really important to remember that that is what our check is, and if they don't match, we're gonna question it. Review your WCG, CBS, and passport differences report to verify all recipients and awards and make sure the awards are correctly reported. This is another area where if you use the unit record and look at this, you'll be able to see where there are discrepancies. And it may be that you know there's a discrepancy but haven't sent the money back yet, or there are just a variety of situations that can cause the differences, but they need to be remedied before we can go forward. So it's really an important report. The reporting of tuition waiver dollars for Washington College grant and college-bound scholarship recipients is required for 2019-20. This has been in the works for the last couple of years, and tuition waivers are considered aid. So we need you to give us an accurate representation of all forms of assistance that needy students are receiving, and that includes the full assessed tuition and fee amounts in each student's cost of attendance. Report the waivers as a financial aid resource in the appropriate field. They may be a need-based institutional gift aid, or they could be non-need-based institutional gift aid. But these are things that are important for you to report. And state work study. This year's been a little odd, as those of you who participate in the state work study program know. Expenditures you have under the state work study program, we would like you to report on the unit record under state work study. So it was either on campus or off campus. Report that separately. Report the student's total gross earnings, including the employer match or institutional share, and include summer employment if you had it. Report either your actual gross earnings based on the monthly cutoff dates or the institutional payroll dates. Average gross term earnings over the academic year for all terms that the student was enrolled at least half time. And what we are looking for here is that your total amount needs to be very close to what was reported to us by the state work study program staff. You need to report institutional gift aid as either need-based institutional gift aid if it was need-based, and all institutional grants, scholarships, and or waivers awarded solely or partially on a review of the 2019-20 FAFSA or WAFSA should be reported as need-based institutional gift aid. Conversely, all institutional grants, scholarships, and or waivers awarded without regard to the FAFSA or WAFSA should be reported under the non-need-based institutional gift aid category. And it includes institutional funds awarded to Running Start or non-matriculated students. Under the other state-funded gift assistance category, we want you to report sources of aid that are not reported elsewhere. Things like the American Indian Endowed Scholarship, Early Achievers Opportunity Grant, Global Opportunity Grant, which is for University of Washington only, Gold Star Book Stipend, Student Emergency Assistance Grant, Washington Scholars, supporting students experiencing homelessness. There was a pilot program. So anything that doesn't fit into another category, we would like you to report here. And of course, any questions that you have, call Ann. Now we're on to edits. And the reason we have edits is to help ensure the data quality. And we work really closely with our IT staff to develop edits that make sense. And this year we really worked because we know how they take a lot of time for you to resolve, and we're trying to make it easier on you, but to get to the edits that really make a difference. So you might see some changes this year a little bit. And so we're trying to get to the point where the edits that we're at that you have to address are fewer. But we keep in mind we really are cognizant of how they affect you and the kinds of things you have to do to make sure that the edits are all fixed. So we have softer edits for students receiving only non-need-based federal loans. They won't stop as much. FAFSA-related edits are also softer for students not receiving the FAFSA or WASFA required aid types. We're giving you a little grace. So we have two kinds of edits. There are edits that prevent the file upload, and as I said at the very beginning of the presentation, the appendices are very important. And for those edits that prevent the file upload, I'm referring you to Appendix C, specifically page 46 in the manual. And here are just some examples of errors that would prevent the upload. Header, row missing or invalid. That'll get you every time. You've got to have a header, and it needs to have what we have instructed it for you to have in each of those fields. Duplicate Social Security numbers, any invalid codes, and blanks that are, if you report any blanks in a required field. And keep in mind, there are a total of 12 edits that will prevent the file upload. Non-overrideable edit examples, again, it's in Appendix C, page 47 to 49 in the manual. You cannot override total aid reported as 0. A non-resident with a Washington College grant or other state aid, they have to be a resident of Washington in order to get any of those programs. If the number in college is greater than family size, it's not overrideable. You'll need to change the data. And no valid institutional state work study allocation in the portal, and that's a new edit. And a note, if the file upload worked, but then the secondary edits run, it might require you to correct the student record before you can submit the file. Here are some overrideable edits. Again, Appendix C, pages 47 to 49. Basically, for field content, the need amount is 0 with need-based aid. Your budget changed with dropped credits. You can override that. You're in school for aid types, federal grad plus loan. This one is always, it makes us all crazy. The student graduated mid-year and suddenly goes from an undergrad loan to a federal grad plus, and we're wondering why this happened. So we always have to go look at that, but it is something that you can override. Date of birth outside the normal range, and I think we expanded that this year, didn't we? No, it updates every year. Okay. Cost of attendance minus expected family contribution, which is calculated by the edit program, does not equal need amount reported by the college. That is an overrideable edit. Just some reminders about these edits. Keep your override comments concise and to the point. But while saying that, they also need enough information so that the edit can be directly addressed and that it makes sense to us as well. Report your family income using the WCG income calculation, not the total federal total income field from the FAFSA. This comes up every year. The family income, total family income for WASAC purposes is not the same as FAFSA total income. So you need to make sure that you're not just using that and reporting that instead of what we want for total income. Help you out with that. Keep in mind for dependent students, family income includes just the parent's adjusted gross income and non-taxable income. It does not include the student's income. When calculating your family income for an independent student, you count the student's AGI and untaxed income, non-taxable income, and that of their spouse, so if they're married. So they're a little bit different than what you're looking at when you use FAFSA total income. Both dependent and independent students use the sum of all taxable plus non-taxable income if the AGI is not present. So if they're not a tax filer. And these are just some things to keep in mind. The financial aid administrator may, but is not required to subtract the following allowable exclusions: taxable earnings from need-based employment programs such as federal work study and need-based employment portions of fellowships and assistantships, taxable student grant and scholarship aid reported to the IRS in the AGI. This includes things like AmeriCorps benefits as well as grant and scholarship portions of fellowships and assistantships, untaxed combat pay or special combat pay, earnings from work under a cooperative education program offered by a college. Title IV grant aid should be subtracted from the base income regardless of whether it was taxed or untaxed. And keep in mind, child support income must be excluded from income calculations for less than half-time students, but not from other enrollment categories. And veterans' benefits are treated in the same manner as for the purposes of eligibility for Title IV financial aid. Those are just some notes to keep in mind. We want you to report adjusted expected family contribution according to the need duration if a student attended less than full-time, full year, if your standard practice is to do so. Need, COA, and duration must all be consistent. Report all known race categories for each student, even where Hispanic origin is marked Y. It eliminates gaps in our research data. So, tips and best practices. Upload your CSV file early. Don't wait for the deadline. It always makes it easier if you're able to do it early. Review the 2019-2020 Unit Record Manual and training materials, and test upload using the portal training environment. You're able to test before you actually submit it. So we've listed the URL for the portal training. Use the unit record informational reports to check for consistency and validity. The college and technical colleges review the SBCTC 2019-20 unit record processing guide when it's available. And contact WASAC with questions or problems that are not addressed in the WASAC's unit record manual, or any questions that you may have. We are here to help you, and we always learn something new every year. Anne's been doing this a really long time, and I know that she and I both have been learning new things every year. I have one final note I didn't, this came up, I think, last year. If you have unserved students who never received any financial aid and were self-pays, don't add a record for them. They'll be on the discrepancy report, and they won't, not as an edit. So that's just another tip.
Much of the information I'm going to go over may be a repeat for a number of you, but we believe there may be a lot of new aid administrators on the line with us, and so each year we go through step by step the entire process, just so we can capture understanding for those that have not been through the process before. This login is the direct login to the portal, and as we mentioned earlier, both for portal training and for the main portal, the link has changed. I believe it used to go through Fortress, and now all of them are direct login through the portal.wasac.wa.gov. And so please be sure to bookmark that in your computers in order to not experience that issue with the redirect, which is no longer functional. in order to get to this landing page, you can go directly to this portal.wasac.wa.gov, or you can go to our main website at wasac.wa.gov and click on the menu bar under Administration. The portal is a direct link from that as well. So it will bring you to this login page. You can log in either by clicking the unit record link here, which will ask for the same information as you logging in through the main login up in the upper right-hand corner. The difference is that this link, once you've completed entry of your login ID and password, will take you directly to the unit record. This main login is if perhaps maybe you're planning on working on other items in the portal before you start working in the unit record. So it'll get you two different places in the portal, but ultimately your destination is the unit record report. All right, so if you go in through the main login, this is what you will be looking for. Under the home, you will click on Programs, Unit Record. If you are authorized to work in that, will show up in that drop-down. If you don't see Unit Record in the drop-down, contact your campus institutional portal administrator and have them add that to your authorizations. We can do that here. We prefer to have the institutional administrator do that, mostly because that way we know for sure that they're aware who has access to the unit record site, and it gives them more control. So, you know, if for some reason your aid administrator or your portal administrator is not available, contact us, but our first preference is that you go through your campus administrator. Clicking on the unit record tool will bring you to this welcome page for the first time before you've uploaded any information. And it just has some information for you to prepare, and then click Proceed to Upload. Once you've uploaded information, you can go partially through your unit record, exit, and then come back later. If you do that, when you log in again, it will bypass this this welcome page, and it will take you directly to the step where you were, whether it's ready to begin, in process, or submitted. All right. Next, you want to locate the CSV file that you have prepared for upload, and it does need to be a CSV file. If it's a regular Excel file, it will blow up and not load. So be sure whatever file you upload is a CSV, and then click Upload here. If your school manually adds everyone, which we don't necessarily suggest because it is a time-consuming process, instead of uploading a file, you can click this Add Students manually, and it will take you through that process. If you have a large file, you'll see a processing bar that will show you where you're at in terms of your file upload. If there is a major or critical error in your file, you will receive error codes, and generally speaking, it will tell you where in your file you will find that error. So be sure to take a close look. Sometimes if you have large file, it will only show you a certain number of those edits, especially if there are edits that are consistently in the same type of field. You may not see one for each record, but make sure that you take note of what type of file error is being shown so that you can review your upload file. And once you've made those corrections, then you can go back to that main upload link and try it again. If, on the other hand, you are uploading a large file and at some point you realize maybe the file is fine except for the fact that you know it contains other errors that you need to correct, you can discard that file. Just stop it in its tracks by clicking this button, the discard button. Then you can correct your error in your main file and then try it again. Oh, and I guess I just went over this process just now. So, you know, it interrupts, it alleviates that long wait time. I'm thinking specifically about, you know, schools that have many thousands of records. If you realize that it's not the right file, you can stop it right away and then start over. All right. Once the file is uploaded, you should have this little summary chart. It will tell you how many records it finds, and depending on the number of enrollment classes you have, say if you're, you know, a community and technical college with only first year, second year students, you may not see this junior and senior and graduate category, unless, of course, you have applied baccalaureates, in which case, you know, you will see some kind of a distribution. But this distribution list here is only for those classes of students for whom you have submitted a unit record. Just take a quick look at it and be sure that it appears to contain the proper number of records and that the distribution is correct before you click the Proceed to Edit button. All right. As the file is processing, you will start to see edits show up on your main screen. If you see this refresh button, it means that it is not completed with that process. So periodically, click the refresh button, and ultimately, when that button disappears, then you know that your entire file has been processed and is ready for you to start review. When you're ready to edit these records, you can filter them. You can make that designation using this drop-down box, or you can click on these highlighted and underlined column categories in order to resort your file. Okay? And one item while we're on this page, because I'm seeing this reminder, if you see this little red stop sign, that is an indicator of a non-overrideable edit. And with these others, you can see it says overrideable. The colors change as you process through them. If you've already made an override, it will say overridden. Otherwise, those that have not yet been addressed will show as overrideable. Then you can either make the correction in the record, or if you have what you feel is a valid reason for that, that edit to be kept as it is, you can enter an override reason. But for these that are non-overrideable, that indicates that you absolutely have to correct that record before you will be able to proceed with your unit record submission. Okay. In order to make corrections to the student record, you would place your cursor on the Social Security number that is underlined and highlighted in a different color than the rest of the chart, and clicking that will open the student's record. You'll see at the top of the page all of the edits for that particular record shown under this edit error box at the top of the page. Now, if it's an overrideable edit, you can see the override here. We suggest that you take a look at both tabs in order to review the record before you begin to address these, just so you know exactly what it is that you have in that record. As I mentioned earlier, you can either make a correction if it's in these enrollment statuses. You would click directly into whatever term category needs to be fixed. It'll bring a drop down, and then you can make the correction there. If it's in any of the fields for the programs, click directly in the dollar field, and you can either use the up and down arrows that show up, or you can type the correct number in. Be sure before you leave this page that you click the Save button. If you fail to do that, it will not save your changes, okay? And that also applies to these overrides. So be sure that you click that Save button. If you click the Override button, what you'll get is a pop-up with a box where you can enter your comment. You can hover your cursor over that little blue icon on that overridden edit, and a yellow pop-up box will show, and your comment will appear in that box. Okay, once you have addressed all of the edits that you see on this edit page, click to continue. That will bring you next to the discrepancies report. And what you'll see is if you have already addressed an override for any of these items that show up in any of these 4 categories, you will see the word yes with a little icon. As if that you hover your cursor over that little eye icon, it will show you what edit you've entered into that. Any edits that have not yet been addressed will show a blank where that column exists. And so that is your first clue that it needs to be looked at, record needs to be looked at. If it shows without a unit record amount, that there is something in Passport, clicking this link will take you to that Passport record in CSOP. If you don't see anything in the unit record, which means that you have not entered anything into the unit record, you will have to go into the search button at the top of the page and enter this individual Social Security number in order to get to that information. That's the one instance you see on this chart that the Social Security numbers are not highlighted. So we ask that you go through each and every one of these tabs and take a look at those. As I mentioned, if you aren't able to click directly into that student's record from the discrepancy chart, or if you're working in your unit record for any reason and need to check back on a student record, go up to the top of the page in that main menu, and under the unit record, you will see a search button. And that's where you would click to open and enter the student's Social Security number in order to get to that student record. Now, if you realize that you have omitted a record, you can add the individual to the unit record by clicking this Add a Unit Record to the report. So if you click the Add New Unit Record, it will take you to a blank record. And once again, there are 2 tabs. If you're adding a new student to the unit record, be sure that you fully complete both tabs, both the Student Demographics and Need tab and the Student Aid tab. Be sure that you click the Save button in order to retain your work. Otherwise, as I said, it will disappear. This is just kind of a snapshots of the various sections of that student aid tab at the top. There is, and granted, these are just little screenshots of the various sections rather than the entire page. Be sure to complete the term enrollments, and then these are all of the programs that we ask that you report on. Heading back to the differences reports, this missing WCG unserved students tab is critically important this year. It is for those students for whom were eligible for the WCG, but for whom one reason or another they were unserved. So if we do not see that student record in the unit record, they will appear on this report because they are considered missing. Give us a bit more information to confirm that the terms that they were unserved have not changed. And the other caveat that I want to mention about this report is we believe next year it may be removed from the unit record because with the full funding, there should be no unserved. And so this will probably be the final year that we are asking for this information. We ask that you download the CSV file so that you can return this report to us using this link here, send an email. If you happen to be on a page that doesn't show send an email, you can go back to the main menu and go back through your main files and memos and send us the same report through the email system in the other section of the portal. But for your convenience, we've included a link here. And when you download that report, other than the highlighting that you see here, this is what you will see. Any of those students that were on that unserved list, missing unserved list, will be reported. If you look across the row for that student and all of the information is correct, there are no changes, just put a yes or a Y in the column H, which is the indicate yes if all terms okay. You need do nothing else with that student in that row. If, on the other hand, say for Betty Bryan, shows unenrolled, not enrolled, not enrolled, not enrolled, then full-time for spring, not enrolled. If this is changed to, say, three-quarter time, place that information in the verify column next to that. That would be where you would indicate the change in the status. If for some reason one of these not enrolled turns into an enrolled, be sure that you indicate what the current status for that individual was for that term. The bottom half of this screen shows you an example of a completed report. So this individual, no changes. Here for Erin Andrews, you can see that not enrolled was less than half time, not enrolled turned to half time. Here for this individual, full-time turned to three-quarter time. So that will give you a sense of how we want to see this report completed. Be sure to save it once you've made those changes and then send it back to us by way of the portal secure email, as I indicate here. When you're done making those corrections or making your review of all four of these tabs, you would click to continue in order to submit your unit record. On the other hand, if you've realized that you need to make a correction or an addition to the unit record, you can go back to the main edit list and click that Add Student to the unit record. Okay, we're getting very close to the point at which you're able to submit your unit record. This page is what we call the Institutional Program Totals Report. It will have a comparison of the last 4 years, both in terms of dollars, which shows on this side, and the numbers of students, which is on this side. We ask that you take a quick look at this, verify that everything looks correct. If any of those numbers appear to be really out of whack, perhaps there's a program that you're sure that you have recipients, but it shows nothing. It could be that that information was placed in the wrong program column on your upload. So this is kind of a final check for you to see whether you need to make some additional edits to your unit record. There is a caveat that I want to mention with this. This is a preliminary report, and what that means is that when we receive your submission and have completed our review, just before we release the final profile reports in January, we eliminate from the unit record all records that are what we call non-essential or extraneous files. That will remove all the non-need-based aid, except for, I think, the federal loans. So if there's any information that you have reported to us that is not either state or need-based or federal loans, it will be deleted. So you may find some changes in the percentages and in the numbers between this preliminary report that's available now at time of submission and in January. For that reason, we ask that you create a PDF of this page, because it is preliminary, because it is from this preliminary page that we will be doing our reviews. And if you have a copy of it, if there's any question, we can, when we contact you, you can take a look at your previous year's report to see if the kinds of changes that take place are to be expected, because they could be related to those non-essential records that we eliminate. So we ask that you take a copy of it now and that you take another copy of it in January. So if everything looks good, click to continue. Otherwise, click the Return to Edit list, and you'll have another opportunity to make edits or corrections or additions to your unit record. This is your final step here. Once you click this Submit Your Unit Record, this pop-up will show. Once you have clicked OK, you will not be able to go back in and make additional changes to your unit record without contacting one of the unit record staff here at WASAC. We can reopen the file if necessary, and we definitely encourage you to do so if you realize there's an omission or a correction that needs to be made. We'd prefer to do that sooner rather than later because once we get to the point where we have finalized your report, it takes our IT staff to step in and reopen it. But if it's done at this point before too much time has passed, we as unit record staff are able to unfinalize or to reopen that unit record for you. Okay, once you've submitted, You will get confirmation both here in the upper right-hand corner of your unit record, as well as here on the left-hand side. It will tell you who uploaded the initial file, who submitted it, and on the date. So at that point, you can exit the portal and log out. These top 3 reports are available to you even after you have submitted your unit record. The program totals report is that institutional profile report that we talked about that has the 4-year comparison. There's an additional report, the demographic distribution report, and then there is another copy of the differences report for these 3 programs plus the unserved. These are available to you until we shut down the unit record and reopen it for the next year. And at that point, these 3 disappear. So we do suggest that you keep copies of them now and at the time the other reports are made available in January. These last 4 reports down here at the bottom are what become available to you in January after we've completed all of our reviews and finalized all of the reports.
We just want to remind you that the recordings will be available on the website as well for the wasac.wa.gov. Once, and that's her magic, there'll be recordings out there if you want to hear these again or need some clarification on something. Just want to thank you for your time and attention this morning. I know your time is valuable, and if we can be of assistance, please feel free to contact us. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.